The Forbidden Alliance. The crystal towers of Station Harmony gleamed against the backdrop of three suns, their light casting rainbow patterns across the massive diplomatic complex. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from 12 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations sat in their designated sections. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert dozens of languages, clicks, and telepathic signals. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone at the center podium, her simple black diplomatic uniform stark against the elaborate robes and biomechanical augmentations of the alien delegates surrounding her. She had served as humanity's voice in the Terran Alliance for 8 years, but today felt different. Today felt final. High Chancellor Vexmore of the Zilani Empire rose from his elevated seat, his 7-foot frame covered in scales that shifted from blue to silver as he spoke. "The motion before us is clear," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had ruled star systems for millennia. Humanity's membership in the Terran Alliance poses a significant risk to galactic stability. A ripple of agreement passed through the assembly. The Zilani had always been humanity's strongest opponents, viewing them as dangerously unpredictable. Vexmore continued, "Their so-called creative warfare is merely chaos. Their refusal to follow established military protocols has already caused 3 diplomatic incidents. Those incidents prevented larger conflicts." Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustics. "Human flexibility saved lives. Human recklessness endangered entire systems," countered Ambassador Thexwin of the Aquatic Collective. The whale-like being's translated voice echoed with disapproval. "Your species changes tactics mid-battle, ignores chain of command, and makes decisions based on what you call gut feelings rather than logical analysis." Sarah felt frustration building in her chest, but kept her expression neutral. "We call it adaptation, the ability to respond to unexpected situations with creative solutions." A sound like crystalline laughter came from the resonant factions section. These beings of living energy found human emotion amusing. "Creativity," their spokesperson chimed, "is simply a word less advanced species use for randomness." The debate continued for hours, each species presenting their concerns about humanity's place in galactic civilization. The Keth delegate, Commander Zaktar, remained notably silent throughout most of the proceedings. His people were warriors, but they followed ancient codes of honor that valued consistency above all else. As the sun began to set outside the massive windows, High Chancellor Vexmore called for the final statements. Sarah stood once more, knowing this would be her last opportunity to speak for her species. "You fear our unpredictability," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "But that same quality you call chaos has served the galaxy well. When the Trill Plague threatened to wipe out 3 civilizations, it was human medical researchers who found the cure by trying unconventional combinations of treatments. When the Dark Star threatened to destroy the Kepler system, human engineers saved millions by improvising a solution no computer model had predicted." She paused, looking directly at each delegation. "You're about to make a terrible mistake. Our intelligence networks have detected something approaching from the galactic rim. Something ancient and hostile. The Void Hunters are returning." A collective gasp echoed through the hall. The Void Hunters were legend, an ancient enemy that had supposedly been destroyed thousands of years ago. Their return was considered impossible by most galactic historians. "Preposterous," Vexmore declared. "The Void Hunters are myth, stories told to frighten young ones. Even if they were real, they were defeated by superior technology and discipline, not human-style chaos. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive energy signatures consistent with Void Hunter technology," Sarah insisted. "They're moving through dark space, using stealth methods we've never seen before. When they arrive, conventional warfare won't stop them. You'll need every advantage, including human tactical innovation." The hall erupted in skeptical murmurs. Ambassador Thexwin's massive form shifted with what passed for laughter among his people. Even if these Void Hunters exist, humanity's contribution would be minimal. Our combined fleets represent the pinnacle of military technology. What could a species that still uses chemical propulsion offer? Sarah's jaw tightened. Chemical propulsion that's proven more reliable than your quantum drives in combat situations. Backup systems you call primitive have saved human ships when alien technology failed. Enough, Vexmore commanded. The vote will proceed. All in favor of humanity's expulsion from the Terran Alliance. 11 crystalline voting orbs rose into the air, glowing with approval. Only Commander Zakhtar's remained dark. Motion carries, Vexmore announced with satisfaction. Effective immediately, human vessels are restricted to their home system. All human military advisors are to be withdrawn from Alliance facilities. Trade will continue under strict supervision, but humanity will have no voice in galactic affairs. Sarah gathered her materials slowly, her mind already shifting to contingency plans. As she reached the exit, Commander Zakhtar intercepted her path. "Ambassador," he said quietly, his translator giving his words a gravelly quality. "A moment of your time." They stepped into a side corridor away from the other delegates. The Keth commander's scared face showed concern despite his people's reputation for stoicism. "You spoke of the Void Hunters with certainty," he said. "My people's archives contain references to them. Ancient texts speak of an enemy that adapted to counter every strategy used against them." Sarah nodded grimly. "Our xenorchaeologists have been studying similar records. The Void Hunters don't just use advanced technology. They learn from it. They absorb tactical patterns and turn them against their enemies. Traditional alliance warfare follows predictable patterns," Zakhtar mused. "If such an enemy exists, they'll tear through your fleets like paper," Sarah finished, "unless someone teaches the Alliance to fight differently." The Keth commander was quiet for a long moment. "My people value honor above politics. If the threat is real, would humans be willing to share their knowledge despite today's decision?" Sarah considered carefully. Officially, humanity was now banned from galactic military affairs. But there were always unofficial channels. Hypothetically, if certain human military experts were to take extended vacations to neutral systems, and if they happened to encounter Alliance officers looking for unconventional tactical advice. "I understand," Zakhtar said. "Perhaps it would be wise for some Keth officers to take similar vacations." 3 months later, Captain Jake Morrison sat in a dimly lit cantina on Freeport Station, a neutral trading post that existed in the space between territories. The scared veteran had been drummed out of the Alliance military after the human ban, but his expertise in asymmetric warfare made him valuable to certain clients. Across from him sat a hooded figure whose identity remained hidden behind a voice modulator. "You understand the risks," the figure said. "If you're caught providing military advice to Alliance members, it's a life sentence in a prison asteroid." Jake took a sip of his drink, a mixture of human whiskey and alien spices. "Wouldn't be the first time I've broken unjust laws." "What's the job?" "The Keth warrior clans are experiencing unusual equipment failures during training exercises. They need someone familiar with improvised solutions." Translation: The Keth were secretly preparing for something big and needed human tactical expertise. Jake had worked with Keth warriors before and respected their dedication. Payment: standard rate, plus transportation to wherever you want to go afterward. Jake nodded. "When do we leave?" Meanwhile, in the deepest reaches of space, something stirred. Ancient sensors that had been dormant for millennia suddenly activated, detecting the quantum signatures of Alliance fleet movements. The Void Hunters had indeed returned, and they were studying their old enemies' new formations. In their vast ships that seemed to absorb light itself, the collective intelligence that was the Void Hunter Command began analyzing the tactical data they had gathered. The galaxy's defenders still fought in the same patterns, used the same strategies. It would be simple to adapt their countermeasures. But there were anomalies in the data, small variations in some fleet movements, unexpected responses to their probing attacks. Something had changed since their last visit to this galaxy. The Void Hunters began to advance. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the civilian transport taking her back to Earth, watching the stars streak past. In her secure communicator, encrypted messages continued to arrive from human military advisors who had quietly taken positions throughout the galaxy. The network was growing. She thought about the vote that had expelled humanity from galactic affairs. The alien species believed they had removed a chaotic element from their orderly civilization. They had no idea they had just eliminated their best chance of survival. The Void Hunters were coming, and when they arrived, the galaxy would learn the hard way that sometimes chaos was the only order that mattered. When chaos becomes tragedy. The attack came without warning on a peaceful Tuesday morning in the Kepler sector. The scientific research station orbiting a blue giant star had been collecting data on stellar formations when space itself seemed to tear open. The Void Hunter ships emerged like dark wounds against the starfield, their hulls absorbing all light that touched them. Dr. Elena Vasquez was reviewing xenopsychological profiles in her office when the emergency alarms began screaming. Through her viewport, she watched in horror as the research station's defensive platforms tried to respond to the attackers. The automated systems fired their most powerful weapons, plasma cannons, and quantum torpedoes that should have been able to crack a moon. The energy weapons simply vanished when they struck the Void Hunter vessels, absorbed into their dark hulls like water into sand. Return fire came in the form of something that looked like liquid darkness, flowing across space to envelope the defensive platforms. Where it touched, matter simply ceased to exist. All personnel to evacuation pods. Came the announcement over the intercom, but Elena knew it was already too late. The Void Hunters had surrounded the station completely. Similar scenes played out across 17 different systems that day. The Terran Alliance's most advanced defensive positions were wiped out in hours. Ships that had never been defeated in conventional warfare became cosmic dust. Millions of lives were lost before the scattered survivors could even send distress signals. High Chancellor Vexmore stood in the war room of the Alliance's military headquarters, his scales flickering between deep blue and sickly yellow as stress responses triggered his body's camouflage systems. Around him, holographic displays showed the devastating losses. "Impossible," he muttered, reviewing the tactical data. "Our quantum shields should have stopped their weapons. Our adaptive AI systems should have predicted their attack patterns." Admiral Thexwin's massive form dominated one corner of the room, his cetacean body suspended in a mobility harness. "The enemy appears to be absorbing our energy weapons and turning them back against us. They've also demonstrated the ability to predict our fleet movements with disturbing accuracy." "How?" Vexmore demanded. "Our tactical algorithms are based on millions of years of strategic evolution. They should be unpredictable to any enemy." "Unless," said a new voice from the doorway, "the enemy has been studying those algorithms for a very long time." The room fell silent as General Maria Santos entered. The human woman wore civilian clothes rather than a military uniform, her gray hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She moved with the confident stride of someone who had commanded battles across multiple star systems. "What is a human doing in a restricted military facility?" Vexmore's voice carried dangerous undertones. "Saving your lives, if you'll let me," Maria replied calmly. She activated a portable holographic display, showing the Void Hunter attack patterns. "I've been analyzing their tactics since the attacks began. They're not just using superior technology. They're using your own patterns against you." She highlighted specific elements of the battles. Every defensive formation you used, they had a counter-strategy prepared. Every weapon you deployed, they had absorption or deflection methods ready. They've been watching you, learning from you, for longer than you realize. Admiral Thexwin leaned forward, his translated voice heavy with skepticism. "Even if that's true, what can humans offer? Your species has been banned from military affairs." "Officially, yes," Maria agreed. "But unofficially, human military advisors have been working throughout the galaxy for months. We've been teaching unconventional tactics to anyone willing to learn. And right now, unconventional is exactly what you need." She brought up another display showing recent skirmishes where human-advised forces had encountered Void Hunter scouts. In every case where commanders deviated from standard alliance doctrine and used improvised tactics, they achieved better results. The enemy's countermeasures seemed designed specifically for predictable military responses. Vexmore's scales shifted to deep red, indicating extreme anger. You're suggesting that military discipline and proven strategy are weaknesses. I'm suggesting, Maria said patiently, that an enemy who's been studying your discipline for millennia will always be one step ahead of proven strategies. You need something they haven't seen before. Before anyone could respond, alert sirens began wailing. A massive Void Hunter fleet had emerged from dark space near the capital system. The Alliance's most powerful defensive fleet moved to intercept, following established protocols. The battle was over in 6 hours. The Alliance lost 80% of their ships. That night, a secret meeting took place in the depths of Station Harmony. Representatives from several species gathered in an abandoned cargo bay, their presence hidden from official records. Commander Zaktar had organized the gathering, and the guest of honor was Captain Jake Morrison. The situation is critical, Zaktar explained to the assembled officers. Traditional tactics have failed completely. We need alternatives. Jake stood before the group, his weathered face showing the strain of recent events. The Void Hunters are playing a game where they know all the rules. We need to change the game entirely. Explain, said a resonant officer, her energy form flickering with interest. Guerrilla warfare, Jake said simply. Hit and run tactics. Psychological warfare. Adaptive strategies that change faster than the enemy can respond. Your species have been fighting clean, predictable wars for so long that you've forgotten how to be unpredictable. He activated a tactical display showing human historical conflicts. When humans faced technologically superior enemies, we didn't try to match their strengths. We used terrain, timing, and psychology to create advantages where none existed before. Dishonorable, muttered a Keth officer. Effective, Jake countered. Honor is meaningless if your civilization is extinct. Over the following weeks, word spread through the Alliance military, not through official channels, but through quiet conversations between officers who had watched their friends die in conventional battles. Human advisors began appearing at bases throughout the galaxy, teaching new approaches to warfare. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had escaped the research station attack, found herself working with Alliance psychologists to understand Void Hunter behavior patterns. They're not just tactically adaptive, she explained during a briefing. They're psychologically profiling entire species. They know what you'll do before you do it, because they understand how your minds work. Then how do we become unpredictable? Asked Admiral Thexwin, who had grudgingly attended the human-led strategy sessions. By embracing what you've been calling chaos, Elena replied. Human commanders make decisions based on intuition, emotion, random factors, and incomplete information. We call it thinking outside the box. You call it insanity, but it's exactly what the Void Hunters aren't prepared for. The turning point came during the Battle of Twin Suns. Alliance forces under human tactical guidance abandoned their standard battle formations entirely. Instead of engaging in direct fleet combat, they used hit-and-run attacks, feints, and coordinated strikes that appeared random but followed a deeper pattern the Void Hunters couldn't predict. For the first time since the invasion began, Alliance forces achieved a decisive victory. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a commandeered Alliance cruiser, watching Void Hunter ships retreat into dark space. Around him, alien officers who had initially been skeptical of human methods now looked at their tactical displays with new understanding. They adapted to our new approach within hours, noted Commander Zaktar. But it took them hours instead of minutes. Progress. More than progress, Jake replied. It's proof that they're not invincible. They can be confused, delayed, and ultimately defeated. We just have to keep changing the rules faster than they can learn them. News of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, carried by communication networks that suddenly buzzed with new possibilities. Species that had mocked human unpredictability began requesting human military advisors. The underground network that had been operating in secret was suddenly in enormous demand. High Chancellor Vexmore found himself in the unusual position of having to eat his words publicly. Standing before the Reformed Alliance Council, his scales showed the deep blue of humility as he spoke. "The motion before us today," he announced, "is to formally request humanity's full restoration to Alliance membership and to offer them leadership positions in our combined military forces." The vote was unanimous. Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Station Harmony not as a band representative, but as humanity's new Director of Strategic Innovation. Her first act was to establish the Tactical Diversity Initiative, ensuring that every Alliance battle group included advisors from multiple species, with humans specializing in adaptive and unconventional warfare. General Maria Santos was appointed as the Alliance's first chief of irregular warfare, tasked with developing strategies that would keep the Void Hunters guessing. Her first strategy briefing to the full Alliance military leadership was simple. "From now on, we fight like humans, creatively, unpredictably, and with the understanding that the best plan is the one your enemy never sees coming." The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, the galaxy had hope. The species that had once been considered too chaotic for civilized society had become the key to survival. In the depths of space, Void Hunter command ships struggled to adapt to the new reality. Their ancient intelligence networks, so effective at predicting conventional military responses, found themselves constantly surprised by the creative chaos of human-influenced tactics. The hunters had become the hunted, and they were learning what humans had always known. Sometimes the only way to win is to change the rules entirely. As Sarah Chen looked out at the stars from her new office, she smiled grimly. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about the value of diversity, creativity, and the strength that comes from thinking differently. Humanity had proven that chaos, properly directed, could be the most powerful force in the universe. The Void Hunters were still out there, adapting and evolving, but they now faced an enemy that would never stop changing, never stop innovating, and never stop finding new ways to turn disadvantage into victory. The Silent Watchers had become the galaxy's guardians, and the universe would never be the same.